So thanks for joining. Again, we are recording. This is part of the Misinformation Village, which I'll talk a little bit about the output and the artifact that we're going to be creating today, what our objectives are. This is collaborative. So again, if you can go to the Miro board, Eliana, great. That's awesome. If you haven't, go ahead and get into there, and I'll introduce that in just a second. I'll jump into it. But I'm going to go ahead and get started talking about what we're here to talk about today. We are discussing a first principles messaging approach for trust and community resilience. This is a hands-on workshop for effective marketing strategies. Marketing is bad. No, marketing is just another word for messaging. And what we're going to be talking about is new and emerging cyber threats. So without further ado, this is a joint presentation with the Misinformation Village. The Misinformation Village is a group of collaborators, academics, industry people, where we get together in many places to discuss how we can inform, create, and share new resources on the thorny and intersectional information, cognitive and security challenges that is disinformation. A presentation was given at the last MozFest by Ahmed, who was going to be my joint presenter today, but he couldn't make it at Mozilla Festival. And so this is sort of a follow-on. That was a little bit of a technical discussion, and today we're going to be talking a little bit more human. We have upcoming we just did in Costa Rica, we did a RightsCon. So there was a presence there discussing misinformation in Costa Rica. And in August, we're going to be at DEF CON in Las Vegas. It's a big hacker conference, and I'll be talking about that. So again, this is collaborative. So please meet me in Miro. You can go to this redirect. It's MessageSpecs.com/MozFest, and that is going to bring you over here to the Miro board. And I need to switch over into there. Okay. So what we're going to do, this is just for introduction. So I see Stephen, Eliana, and Tyler in here. This is awesome. So what I want you to do is click on the little sticky over here and duplicate it. So that's either going to be Control or Command D, depending on whether you're a Mac or a PC. And drag your sticky over and just introduce yourself. So hello, I'm Joel. And I'm here because I am interested in helping people, and don't worry about spelling mistakes, that's okay. Helping people discuss misinformation. Okay, so one of my chief interests is in, and I'll talk about myself in a little bit, it is in helping people communicate. Oh, there's my big gigantic face. That's why I couldn't see myself. Let me drag myself over here so that I can look at you guys while we're doing this. So Tyler is here because they are interested and curious about the MessageDeck cards. Yeah, we're going to be talking about that. Oh, and I'm blocking Varden. I'm going to move myself over here on this side so I'm not in anybody's way. All right. Who else do we have? Eliana is researching political disinformation. Awesome. Stefan is here also to learn about misinformation. And I'm going to fix my spelling here. All right. And so who do we have? Olaf did come in. Awesome. And Varden working on alternatives. Ooh, to ad-based. This is going to be great. I'm going to love this. Ad-based business model. And here because curious about the collaborative model. Awesome. That is fantastic. I want everybody to, I'm going to add emojis. And again, this is just sort of getting people used to what we're doing here. You should be able to grab an emoji off the left-hand side. So what I want you to do is open up the emoji slider if you have that, grab an emoji and drop it on the card of somebody who you're excited to see them here. So I am going to drop it on Varden. I'm very excited about this model. Is everybody able to grab those emojis? Is it working? Maybe, maybe not. Bring everybody back over to the middle. There we go. It does work. Awesome. So grab that emoji. It doesn't have to be the same one, smiley face, and drop it on somebody that you're excited to see today. Again, we're just working things out. Again, the emoji is the little sticker and emojis tray out here. You can grab anything. There's all kinds of stickers and emojis and things if we want to drop on there for Tyler. Cool. So moving on, and I'll introduce myself in depth in a little bit. I want to talk about what we're doing today and where we're going to go. So I'm going to drag you all over to this slide, and we're going to talk about where we're going and what we're doing. So bring everybody to me. So I'm curious about what your plugin is here and what your experience with misinformation is. So grab, again, it's Control or Command D, duplicate the little sticky. My thoughts on misinformation are, it's a human problem on the tech one. This is my approach, and that's what I'll be talking about. But I'm curious to see what everybody's familiarity, what you do with misinformation, how you deal with it. Again, if you need to copy that sticky, it's Control D or Command D to copy it, because I think that one might be locked in place. Thoughts on misinformation are the many root causes from the incentive system. Yep, I'm going to talk about that. It's so ubiquitous these days and getting hard and harder to identify. Well, this is true. It definitely is. So as we're filling this out, I'm going to go ahead and for those of you who have filled it in, I'm going to direct you back over to Zoom, and I'm going to just give you a quick little overview of what I'm going to talk about, and because it's going to help us as we move along. So this is an event that happened recently. We talked about it's really hard to identify AI-generated misinformation. So just about a month ago, there was a report of smoke or an explosion at the was it the Pentagon, and that it shook the markets, and people freaked out because it was very hard to know what was real and what wasn't. And a lot of people were saying this is an AI problem. This is misinformation. This is an AI problem. But I want to introduce you to somebody real fast. And this is the only thing that I'm going to read off to you today. So this is Lord Thomas Cochrane. He was the 10th Earl of Dundonald. He was a Scottish naval officer, a mercenary, and a politician who fought in the French Revolution and Napoleonic Wars. What's interesting about this guy is one day, and I'll pull myself back up here. One day in 1814, a uniformed man posing as Colonel de Bourgh arrived at a shop in Dover, and he announced to everyone that Napoleon had been killed and that the war was over, and that the Bourbons were victorious. And this news spread. There were several people who were running to dispatch offices and saying the war is over, Napoleon is dead. There was a huge, gigantic spike in the London Stock Exchange, but it turned out to be a big entire hoax. They called it the Dubourg hoax. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because I don't think that misinformation from AI is necessarily a technological one. It's technologically enabled, but what we're going to talk about today is how we can get around that. So the big deal really is these three things: the scale of untrustworthy content, the ability to reach more eyes and brains, and the quality. It's nearly believable fake content. But the problem is us. The problem are the people who receive it, or the people who are technologists like us who are trying to talk about it. So I asked a ChatGPT if we could prompt our way out of this problem, and basically it said no. Ultimately, prompting can be a useful tool, but it's essential to approach it critically and verify through other reliable sources. So I'm going to skip over this, introduce myself really briefly. My name's Joel. I've got a background in theater, education, video games, government communications. I accidentally became an IT nerd, and so now what I do is I help other nerds talk good. That's what we're going to talk about today, and collaboratively over on the Miro board, which we'll return to in just another minute. I'm going to skip all the way through this stuff. If you want to hear about my startup experience, that'll be great. This is my son, Liam. I told him I was going to show him off today, so I do want to give him that credit. He helped me when I was at a startup design a card game to invent a PhD thesis that was the founder's PhD. And we used that very successfully to actually teach people about very complex subjects. And from there, we learned a couple things about messaging, which I'm going to actually skip over these again, but we'll get back into these if we need to. What I want to talk about before we go into the Miro is what is the objective of messaging? And so, oh, still seeing the main camera. Good, perfect. I didn't want you to see those other slides anyway. I just really want to briefly touch on this because this is relevant as we get into collaborating, that there are three main objectives when we're developing messaging and when we're trying to communicate. So the first is emotional, the second is logical, and then there's credibility. So emotion is something that you feel. This is how we get attention and engagement. The second is logic, that is relationship, that is learning, that is teaching. And then the last is credibility. It's a hamburger there because this is, I call it your gut. This is what you feel. Do I trust this information? So what we're going to do today is we're going to go into Miro and we're going to go through an exercise that I developed that's card-based, but we're going to do it virtually in Miro to help us all have a collaborative conversation to kind of explore the emotions, the logic, and the credibility points of how we would want to attack disinformation. Conversion for non-native speakers. That's how you get somebody to make an action. So in the marketing field, when you click on something, when you sign up for something, we call that a conversion. So the idea here is, do I trust this message or do I trust this person enough to move forward? All right. And the last thing I'm just going to touch on very briefly are the different types of messages we're going to talk about today. When we're talking about technical communications and we're talking about misinformation, we often tend to be, as technologists, we tend to go pretty complex. And so messaging, we need to learn how to prioritize this. So the technical details become very, very important to us. And so we think, I just need to explain the technical details. I need to present to this person a technical argument. But that's not really sufficient when we want to communicate. So what we're going to do today is we're going to develop a messaging foundation for how we as technologists or how we as concerned citizens can discuss misinformation. And I'm really excited about the different strata of people and where you come from, because you're going to hit I bet we're going to hit every single one of these layers. The second layer are proof points. These are how do we know? These are testimonials. There are mantras. There are certain things that culturally as technologists or culturally as society, we have phrases that we hear over and over and over again. They have inbuilt meaning to us. And so we will identify some of those potentially. There's values, a little bit different from the values that we hold. These are the value of the communication. And so this would be why you should trust me and what does this message have for you? Like, why should you listen to me about misinformation? Why you should trust it? Then there's storytelling, which is very important in communication, and then a big idea. So what we basically have done is set up a stack here where we can ask these questions as a receiver, and this is going to help us to develop the messages that we're going to give as a sender. So what is this message trying to make me feel? These are emotions. These are high emotion things up at the top. That's this idea. How is it trying to connect with my experience? You know, do I trust this? Does this look and smell and feel like something that is relevant to me? Values. Which of my values is this trying to hook into? If you can identify the value language that misinformation is using, you can use that to understand whether it's genuine. You can identify patterns. And speaking of patterns, we have key phrases. So again, what key phrases or triggers are being leveraged? For those of you who just joined there, maybe they jump back out. I hope you're all having fun in Miro. The mantras, what key phrases or triggers are being leveraged? Where's the third-party proof or validation? This is very important, and oftentimes we skip over that. Or if we're delivering messaging, we often forget to include that, but that's important. And then where are the bare facts, and do they line up with the story? So what I'm going to do now is we're going to jump back into Miro. I'm going to take a look. We're going to spend the rest of our time in Miro. And if I need to jump into some of the other slides so that we can have an open conversation about those different levels, we can do that. The way the system technically works, and I'll skip down, we'll go into here. I'll bring everybody to a Miro board. But the way the product approach works that I do with my customers and clients is, ooh, I got very big right there. Let me make myself very small. It's a card deck where in the workshop format, if you look right back at Zoom really fast, because I skipped over this, there's a bunch of questions that we would ask. So aligning with all of the different layers that I just talked about, we have opportunity, injustice, ideas, industry. These are idea cards. So these would be things that you would ask and prompt your team or prompt your collaborators on. And then we'd write our answers on the back. So we go all the way down into these cards. We don't have that today because we're using Miro. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a Miro board, and very similar to the way we did our introductions, I want everybody to grab a sticky note, and we're going to go through a couple of these questions and exercises specifically through the lens of misinformation. So grab a sticky note. I'm going to grab this first one here. And I want you to think about, what is something you would change about your industry? What would something you would change about misinformation? You would change about the media landscape? What are these big ideas, these injustices? I think I have injustice coming up actually. But what is something that you want to change? So for me, I want there to be a more open discussion about misinformation. I could say, if I grab another one, I want technologists not to get stuck in the details and connect on a human level. Let's see, more transparency. Don't want to see misinformation lead to fragmentation. That's good. More tools for artists, an intersection of their practice as creatives and techs. Absolutely love that. That's phenomenal. Back to the business model. I love this. I think we're going to be able to tie some of these together. Okay. More tools and access to technologies that can better identify AI-generated or procedural content. I love it. Very good. I'm gonna go ahead and stick a pin in this one. I want to drop into slide 6 and pull everybody over to me. Need like a whistle. There we go. Here's a good one. What's an injustice in the world that we want to change with respect to misinformation? So again, big ideas. These are like the big things that we want to tackle, the reason to have these conversations. How about misinformation is a way advantage of, whoops. Misinformation takes advantage of people. It's a way to leverage control, spreads virally and takes away attention from it. Well, I like where this is going. Yeah, Eliana, I like that. It affects the poor, the poorest and most vulnerable. Exactly. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab my sticky and I'm going to go ahead and cluster it over near yours. We're going to do clustering in a little bit, but I love this. I'll grab both of these. Right. So what we're doing right now is just free thinking. This is a forward looking exercise where we're just free thinking. We're getting all of our ideas out. The reason this works really well is because normally when you're in a workshop or you're in a meeting, the person with the biggest one of these or the person with the loudest opinions, they're the only people that gets heard. What's great about this model is we can do this asynchronously. We can do this remotely. We can do this collaboratively, but we're not really talking. So I'm doing a lot of talking, but the idea is if we're limited by what we can say and we're limited by that understanding, then we're limited in how much collaboration we can do. So the idea here is we just prompting by some of these prompts and these questions, we're just getting our ideas out. This is very good. Slowing down just a little bit. I'm gonna jump into the last one that I've got for ideas, big ideas. What's an opportunity you see that others don't? Let's not be dour and down. Let's actually be let's be excited, right? Let's look for those opportunities. What is an opportunity that we see that others don't? Maybe about AI, about misinformation. Let's talk about AI. So since we're talking about the downside of AI potentially being misinformation, what's an opportunity that we can have? And I would say it enables scale for good, right? We can use this as a resource. We don't have to be at the mercy of misinformation. There are a lot of people who are using large language models and things like that to combat and to do trust and safety, right? So trust and safety, labor saving and time saving, right? Creating resources that help educate, provide sources for artists on the impact of AI on their work and creativity. I love the work and creativity. Resource made by collaboration with artists themselves. Yeah, I mean, it can potentially be an extension of what we do, right? It's an extension of our creativity. I'm gonna go ahead and jump into our story slides here. And so now a story slide is really about connecting with the experience of your audience, right? So if we want to have a conversation about misinformation, we've got to meet our customers or our audiences where they are. So where are they going to be in the future because of AI? And how can we begin preparing them for their future needs, right? So, things are moving very quickly. We're scaling very fast. Let's just think for a moment on where our audience might be in the future and how we can start having those conversations now, right? So the idea here is to be a little bit proactive, start painting those pictures. How about AI assistants will be integral and relied upon, so they should be able to be trusted? And then that would ask us the question, why? How? How do we do that? Right? This starts to prompt questions and it starts to prompt some participation in that mind experiment that we're having. We might be interacting more directly with AI, yes. Becomes a standard interface. Yeah. Voice maybe hasn't really caught on because it hasn't quite been conversational enough. So maybe that will become an interface. Yeah, AI will be controlled by a few and consolidated in the market. This is true. If we allow it to go in the direction that it potentially is going. Finding a new way into unexpected markets. Yeah. Ooh, farming. I like that. That's gonna open us up to a lot of potential. All right. Let me see what other story questions I have here. I'm going to jump us over into tension. So tension is really, where is the tension between the consumers and their stakeholders? So again, this prompt was sort of written a little bit with a product in mind, but I think we can adapt this and frame it through our audience and their families, or our audience and the people that they rely on. So or the audience and their workplaces. So where does AI and the potential for misinformation create tension, maybe create a little bit of mistrust? Or maybe it's a good tension. Maybe there's an excitement there, right? We don't always have to think negatively. Should have some background music or something playing. Should think about that for next time. And we have a little bit of skepticism. Yeah. Creates an information bubble. This is true. That is definitely attention. Right. And you can always drop any questions into Zoom, and feel free to ask questions and use those emojis as well. We'll get a chance to do more emojis in a minute here. And I think I have one more story that we're going to do. Let's just do this. I have over 200 different prompts, so I tried to select a couple that would work for our conversation today. So I have to remember which ones I picked. So for unseen forces, this is a little bit different than an opportunity, but this is a way to call out forces that we don't often see. I have another card, I don't think I've used it here, called the villain, which is where we talk about putting a name to something that we all feel, but we don't often name it. So for example, if I was, crass capitalism, if I was a detergent company, I would talk about the stinky sock problem. But what unseen forces, like you put a name to something, you can address it. So what unseen forces do you see in this discussion about misinformation and AI that others maybe don't, or maybe they do, but it's not being discussed, right? We're not talking about it because it hasn't been named. And this is a way to find those story points that we want to talk about. Fragmentation, I love it, Olaf. Definitely we become more fragmented. I'm going to say we have a distance from human touch. And while you're doing that, I just had an idea for an opportunity that while you guys are over there, I'm going to create a new opportunity card that I just thought of. I'm going to show you how this works in a little bit. All right. Let's zip into, I'm going to skip across a couple stories. And I'm just going to do one value. I'm going to bring us all into a value card. This again was written a little bit for products, but let's put ourselves in the place of a technologist who's trying to communicate to the general public about misinformation, about AI, right? So we have to present a bit of a value story. We have to say why you should listen to me, not from a credibility standpoint, but what are you going to get out of it? Because as human beings, we do have a little bit of a give and take. So what is the biggest need as a technologist, as someone who is trying to take the reins of this conversation? What's the biggest need that we would satisfy by having someone listen to us? What's the biggest upshot we have? The other value slides that I have probably not quite as relatable to this, but everybody has a need. So I'm going to say we need human connection. I think that's, if people are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy. Fun fact, not quite a fun fact, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that pyramid of self-actualization, actually stolen from the Blackfoot Native Americans in Canada. And so while Maslow was talking about how I can become a better human, there's my understanding of it was talking about how we can become a more actualized society. That was kind of inverted. So I kind of like theirs better. But we need a human connection. So I love that. Content generation, but backed with trust and cultural understanding. Yeah, we're going to need a lot of content, especially as we start combating misinformation. We're going to need AI to produce trustworthy, good information, and that takes content. Open, global, secure, trustworthy internet. with the social and economic benefits. Yeah. Oh no. No, don't worry about the shop talk. This is good. We're going to get down into the technicals in a little bit, but we'll have to gloss over those because really this is a conversation that is more about the human. But yeah, no, I agree. Translation of technical conversations into creative language. Yeah, people want to be able to still experience art, and if they feel that everything is stripped away and it's artificially generated, they won't connect with it quite as much. Right, so there's our human connection. Freedom of misinformation from health when freeing the mind, freedom of pesticides when feeding the body. Okay, yeah, we can't neglect our physical. So very good. That's very much in with Maslow, right? We can't neglect our physical needs when we're looking after our intellectual needs. And I think we could do this one too for value. What's a change that we offer? So if we're coming to this as technologists and we're talking about misinformation and we're telling people that they should not do something, we have to offer them alternatives. We have to offer them an upshot that is going to benefit them. So what changes do we offer them in their lives if they choose to listen to our cautions about misinformation, or if they listen to our positions? So what are some of the changes that we could offer them? I'll slide myself up here too. And again, we're just spitballing. We're throwing things down here. A bunch of different ideas. Some are going to shake out. Some are going to give us opportunities to spread more. Typically, over a workshop, we would do this over a couple hours, right? So we would take a little bit more time. We would be having some conversations about this, but this is just sort of to give you the feel for how we develop these conversations. And some of these prompts may be used again at DEF CON when we get together with the Misinformation Village in Las Vegas. We'll take some of these and we'll begin building upon these. So it's okay that these are going in a lot of different directions. This is sort of that storming, if you're familiar with the storming, norming, forming, I think it is. Storming, forming, norming. It's one of those. I'm all about storming. I don't get into the forming quite as much. A better understanding of the world grounded in facts and critical thinking. All right, let's cluster those together. From a consumer perspective, I know if I can trust a source, I'm more likely to interact with its content or products. Oh, see, this is fantastic. See, now we're starting to get alignment. So what's great about this is we're all being prompted with these questions. And when we start to answer things that are very close, we start to find out alignment. We start to find things that are true. We start to then develop a sense of community, because what we're doing is we're learning a little bit more about the general collective. So more trust, yeah, I love it. Avoid the feeling of loss that's common when consuming a lot of mis and disinformation. Yeah, I love that. All right, I'm going to zip through a couple more of these. I just want to talk about mantras real fast, because this is sort of a different concept. A lot of marketers will talk about things called core messages, right? This is a set of bullet points and things that we have to deliver. We have to deliver in our messaging, right? So it's sort of like a checklist. I don't like core messages. I think especially when we're talking about a movement and we're talking about a community, we're talking more about culture. And so these are things that are more baked into our conversations and our messages that we will use frequently, but they're not necessarily formalized. So a pillar mantra in my mind is just what the card says here. What phrase do you find yourself repeating often? So in my consulting work, I call myself a nerd that talks good, right? And it says something about me. And I also say that complex shouldn't be confusing. So I'm curious about when you have a conversation with someone about AI and misinformation, What phrase do you often hear yourself repeating? If you're not aware, if there's not anything that comes to mind immediately, start paying attention over your conversations over the next couple weeks, and see if there's not just something that you say. The other card that I have under here is an echo. We can use the same canvas here. What phrase do you hear other people saying often? So what is something that you hear a lot? And I'll say AI is thinking, right? We hear a lot of people talking about, it has, AI understands. And really, as insofar as what we know, it doesn't, right? AI doesn't think, right? It's just what we call spicy autocomplete, right? It's looking for patterns, but it is uncanny, right? Doesn't really understand, but it does have maybe we'll call it a concept of context. So generative AI or art, can't think about something, I hear something, yeah. The business models are important. Why are the business models important? I'm gonna press you on that a little bit. Was it Varden? So one of the things that I do in my my overhead camera turned off. One of the things that I do in my workshops is I have a concept. If I can pull up this camera here, called these focus cards. And what the focus cards let you do is challenge. So I'm going to say, so what? Varun, I want you to dig deeper into that concept. We want to get to that. Dig deeper and get to the heart of the matter. You keep bringing up business models, and I'm very curious about what you think about those business models. We will see some of that shake out as we get towards the end here. Hype, it's just a bunch of hype, potentially. I mean, how long has it been since ChatGPT really hit the streets and captured the public imagination? Disinformation is there forever. Yeah, trying to dismiss the complexity of the issue kind of goes back to the conversation earlier, which is that it's been around, so why should we deal with it? Well, we should deal with it because of the scale, as we talked about earlier. So our information ecosystem is dominated by a model that financially benefits from misinformation or emotions, or I see where you're going with that. I like that. Just for grins, the other card that I have, and it seems to be where we're kind of getting into, is the Zeitgeist card. So what I want everybody to do really fast is pull up a web browser and just do a really quick Google search. I want you to type whatever you're thinking of. I'm going to do AI misinformation, and I'm just curious. And you have to scroll down through some of the. You're going to learn a lot about my algorithm and how Google has tuned to me. But what are the things that we hear that are like the biggest common words and phrases on the first page? So you're going to have to get through the advertisements. But on mine, I'm saying help. I'm seeing fake news. I'm seeing deep fakes. I'm saying misinformation again. So AI misinformation, bias. Bias is a really good one. Let's see some of these other ones. So it's fake. If I just change this to AI, maybe we'll just do artificial intelligence. Now what do we see? Workers being replaced, may eliminate some jobs. Comedians test ChatGPT. That's not so funny. The Beatles. So the idea here is, what are some of the things that are in the general sphere, right? And we kind of touched that on the previous one, but I'm going to say fake news, very obviously. And if you're tempted to go complex, I challenge you to just make these really short. So misinformation, help. What else did I see there? Let's see. take jobs. All right, non-business, community, donors, good ones. People figuring out what it means to them. All right. Right for now, I'm going to skip over the proof points because we don't have time to do a bunch of research right at the moment. But I just want to talk about proof points really quickly and why they're important. As you would develop this a little bit deeper, and we're getting into the bottom of that that pyramid that I showed you, the very technical details. These are things that do require some research, and they require some discussion. But it's really important when you're making a case and when you're trying to communicate to somebody, especially technically, that you provide some proof points. But it doesn't always have to be statistics. So this is proof points around environment. So what third-party statistics or trends? We could also talk about specific metrics, but I love outcomes. So successes with no numbers. I think I might have another one here. Testify. So talking about yourself is weird. What can you get someone else to say about you? This is really good because what you're then doing is you're leveraging social proof, and you're leveraging somebody else saying something about you. And one of the things that I completely have neglected to mention throughout is, and if you spend any other time with the cards, because I've kind of been zipping through this, is the icons up at the top have been guiding us all along about the objectives that we're trying to get at. So as we look at some of the cards, maybe a little bit later on, we can talk through that. So I'm going to zip through really fast the technicals because we're coming up on 10 minutes and I want to get to the clustering at the end. Is what does your solution do? So again, this is a little bit more geared towards people who are doing in marketing communication, but we can talk about what unique problems does our solution solve. So, you know, if we're a technologist and we're trying to do a counterpoint to AI, what type of solution, what type of things are we solving? So let's just grab another couple of these just for the exercise. If you were going to present a different, maybe Varun, a different, oh, Olaf doesn't see any of the other stickies. Oh, we'll have to look at that at the end. They should be visible. But Varun, yeah, if you can talk about, you know, what other type of business model would you want to build for that, or the unique problem that I'm solving, bringing together nerds and non-nerds, or tech and non-tech, right? So what are the things that you're doing? This is really, you could spend a lot of time. The program has an awful lot of technicals because there's a lot of prompts to ask people about. But the idea here is we only get to the technical conversation near the very, very, very end. And the reason that we do that is because it's much more important to engage people at those higher levels, at the emotional and the story level and the value level, because that's how you then lead them to listen to your technical presentation. So the idea is we can't just, you know, shove a white paper or some research in front of somebody to get them to listen. But on the flip side is you also can't just scare someone with boogeyman stories and scary stories, because then there's no substance, there's no there. So the idea is we're building a message that's completely balanced. Oh, yes, I see what you mean, Olaf. You're not really having a chance to read everybody else's cards, which is correct. So right now we're just dumping, we're getting things out of our heads. What I'm going to attempt to do now is zoom out. I am going to, we'll see if this works because there's a lot of blanks. I'm going to cluster together by color all of our input. I'm gonna have to make this board a little bit bigger. That's okay. So what we're gonna do now on this board, what I'd like everybody to do, oh, do I have to remove the cluster? Oops, they're stuck. There we go. So if everybody can start grabbing cards that have text on them and start dragging them into the stack. We'll get rid of some of these blank ones here in just a minute, but the idea is now we're going to start doing some clustering. We're going to start doing some collecting. We're going to look for commonalities across our stories. And hopefully in the last few minutes, what we'll find, if I delete all those, delete all these, drag. Let me get these back on the canvas for you guys so you can see them a little bit better. Good, awesome. Thanks for everybody's help. There we go. So the idea is now we have collected everything that we could potentially want to talk about. So if we were at a particular organization or, we're doing this as a community, as a culture exercise, we have collected everything that we might want to talk about. And then the rest of the exercise would be, what should we be talking about? And I'm going to just drag these clusters away just so they disappear. We get all the yellows. All right. Okay. So I have to zoom in. Let's just look at our ideas really fast. I think we're probably just going to have a chance to look at ideas, stories, and value, which is perfectly fine. So what we want to do now is we want to start clustering. So I'd like a couple of you to look at the values stack and a couple of you to look at the stories and start dragging together cards that, that relate to one another. So if we talk about elevate human stories, the business model. Here we've got the poorest and most vulnerable, working with taking advantage of people. So again, this takes a little while, but what we'll end up with, and what I'll do a little bit towards the end of after this presentation, is I will cluster these and look for commonality across everything that we discussed and see if we can't develop some messaging. And if you're interested, excuse me, I will share in a minute how you can connect with the Misinformation Village, how you can connect with myself or with Ahmed, and we'll probably have a report in a couple days just of the exercise, what we learned. I'm going to again look through here and I'm going to develop a proposed messaging structure. Let's see, we have over here, down here in values, we need to connect, need human connection, more trust, get information checked and reliable. Yeah, like that is a good cluster. Fragmentation, hyper-personalization and echo chambers, distance from human touch. I think power kind of sits up across the top here. It works for everything. So again, not going to have an opportunity to go into this in super detail, but the idea is what we've now got is a potential universe of messages that, as we cluster and as we cull and as we pull them together, we have real conversations, we have real things that relate to one another, and we're able to develop out then a system. So if we were an organization, a nonprofit, community organization, and we wanted to then action on these, we would have a set of messages. We would know what some of our pillar mantras are. We would then be able to develop messaging campaigns. But the other thing is, using the stack, you're able to use this as a receiver of misinformation or a receiver of information and use it to be a little bit critical, because now you have an understanding of the different strata of communication. So if I can thank you guys for indulging me in the Miro board. I think this went off amazingly well. And I look forward to going through these clusters. I want to leave you just really briefly in the last couple minutes with how you can connect up with us. So I'm going to zip through a lot of my other stuff here and just share how you can connect. Oops. So if I can direct you back over into Zoom, or yeah, back into Zoom, how we can connect. So again, this is a joint production with the Misinformation Village. We have DEF CON coming up in Las Vegas in August. There is a call for proposals and a call for volunteers open now. So if you have any interest at all in working, and you'll be in the Las Vegas area in August. It's not a great time to be in Las Vegas, let's be honest, it's very hot. But the DEF CON community is really phenomenal, and we have a lot of really good back and forth. And this year, we're really trying to build, a set of open frameworks for understanding misinformation. If you want to learn a little bit more about the card model and the thing that we're doing today, you can go to my website, which is MessageDeck.com/sample. It'll redirect you to a sampler, a digital download of the cards that I just put up. And if you use the code MozFest, it's free. So that's just a sampler card deck, but you can download that. You can also get in touch with me. So if you're interested in being contacted with the output of this, we'll probably post the results of this report on the Misinformation Village website. But if you want more information to chat about how this works, you can reach out to me through there. And then Ahmed, who couldn't be with us today, he is really all about building communities, doing engagement very heavily into policy and system design. So that's his website there. But I really want to thank you guys for sticking with us. This is a whirlwind. Again, we usually do this across several hours, maybe several sessions. But the idea is just to find out how we can bring a community of people together, get things out of our heads, get them on the table so that we can start developing messages that can help you get noticed, sort of have hallmarks to help us get remembered, and then we can drive towards results. So I, again, applaud you guys for joining today. This has been fantastic, and I really look forward to reading everything, because again, it went fast, didn't get a chance to read it all. So this is the last session of today, but come back to tomorrow for some more MozFest Fringe, and thanks today.